I know I should be working on my Toy Story 2 love letter instead of ranting about Halo when I'm rapidly running out of time before the next Toy Story 5 trailer inevitably drops, but watching all that gameplay footage and all those roundtable discussions on the reveal of Halo Campaign Evolved back in October set a fire in my heart the likes of which I genuinely can't remember the last time I felt. This is not going to be a hyper-detailed critique. I barely even have a proper script for this video. I just have a lot of feelings that I need to get off my chest before my brain allows me to work on any other projects. I apologize in advance for how heated I am going to get today. I guess to start things off on a positive note, they've retrofitted Combat Evolved with a lot of quality of life improvements from later entries. Vehicle hijacking, ally weapon swapping, the ability to actually pick up the energy swords and fuel rod guns dropped by enemies, making the Flood as ferocious as they were in Halo 3 by adding the Pure forms, and a 4th seat to the Warthog to accommodate the now 4-player cooperative experience so you won't be forced to leave anyone behind, just to name a few. These are all welcome additions I would have expected Halo Studios to incorporate into a remake of CE, and I'm very happy to see that they have. Yeah, that's about all the positive things I have to say. I honestly went into this presentation expecting to not have much of a reaction because, it's Combat Evolved. The game's been around for nearly 25 years. It's either gonna be exactly the same thing with updated visuals, in which case, or it's gonna be a massive revamping of the experience with the potential to improve on some of the campaign's weaker elements, in which case, alright, you have my attention. Let's see where this goes. Unfortunately, I was proven wrong on that assertion almost as soon as the presentation began because it seems like they've gone for a bit of a hybrid approach between the two, maintaining the illusion that they care deeply about preserving the original experiences while also making changes subtle enough that most people might not notice and or care about what they've done here, but still significant enough to meaningfully impact the experience for the worse. Let me give you an example. One of the things that made the original Combat Evolved so revolutionary was the freedom it granted the player. Halo was not content to trap you in tight, linear spaceship corridors as was standard affair for shooters of the time. It instead blew the doors wide open and set you loose into the vast expanses of this mysterious ring world with a wide variety of biomes begging to be explored, with some missions that allowed you to tackle objectives in whatever order you preferred and go pretty much anywhere you wanted. Now, the danger of this design philosophy is that if you grant the player too much freedom, you might lose the ability to carefully curate the types of experiences they can have due to there being too many options to reasonably account for, which is a problem that Halo Infinite's open world encounters suffer from to some extent. Combat Evolved, however, does not suffer from this because Bungie could still dictate exactly what weapons and vehicles you would have access to at any point in the campaign and could always design around those limitations. For instance, in The Silent Cartographer, sure, you can drive around the entirety of the island, you can even drive into the ocean if you want and muck around out there to your heart's content, but you don't have total free reign. There are places in which you are physically not allowed to bring your Warthog no matter how hard you try, and those encounters are deliberately designed around the knowledge that the player will not have access to a vehicle. If you could just bring your Warthog all the way up through this cavern, then suddenly those hunters you have to fight wouldn't seem so threatening. Well, it would appear Halo Studios doesn't agree because they've completely reworked the terrain such that there is now nothing at all stopping you from driving all the way through this section and demolishing not just the hunters, but every enemy in this area. You guys know all these rocks and this giant tree weren't put there by accident, right? Bungie very deliberately made this tunnel exactly wide enough to fit a Warthog because they wanted you to be able to take the vehicle down there if you wanted to, and they also put all these obstacles at the exact positions they needed to be at to prevent a Warthog from fitting through because they didn't want you to bring it along. Giving the player choices in combat is a good thing, but there is a point where you go overboard with that idea and obliterate any sense of challenge or deliberate design. But you don't have to take my word for it. Take the word of Jamie Griesmer, one of the original designers of Halo Combat Evolved, who saw this reveal and didn't seem too pleased with it, basically saying exactly what I just did over on Twitter. You can still finagle your way around this tree if you try hard enough, but the fix for this is to make it harder or outright impossible to get the Warthog up there, not to remove any barricades whatsoever and just say, fuck it, the world is your oyster, do whatever you want.
I can't believe you're taking the Warthog to this fight.
Now he's gonna cheese these hunters.
I can.
I gotta be honest, it felt really vindicating to read these tweets after seeing nothing but people screaming, "Oh my god, Halo fans just anything? Can we just let people enjoy things? Oh, y'all find the dumbest shit to complain about in response to this reveal. And sure, this is just one example. We have no idea what other levels will look like or if they will even be impacted by this at all, especially since the rest of the Silent Cartographer seems generally faithful to the original, mechanically speaking. We'll talk about aesthetics a little later. However, I implore you to consider that this is the one mission they chose to show off, and we already have an instance of Bungie's original level design being deliberately circumvented to the detriment of the experience, as it could now utterly trivialize the hunter encounter up ahead. Not that the hunters in Campaign Evolved need the help of a warthog to be trivialized, because judging from the gameplay I've seen, it is apparently now more tactically advantageous for you to just stick hunters with plasma grenades instead of actually targeting their weak points. See, you can say the hunters in the original game were too easy to take down, but the whole point of them is that they're not designed to be bullet sponges. They're there to force you to mix up your tactics. You cannot battle them like you do every other enemy. Their armor plating is too strong and will eat up far too much of your ammo if you try. You have to engage in a little bit of a dance with them, either baiting them into raising their arm to expose their bellies, or baiting them into charging you, then sidestepping the attack and shooting the flesh on their back from behind. If you can get an angle on their weak points, you are promptly rewarded for doing so. But if you just mindlessly unload bullets into them, you are not. That's the idea. So if you can just easily defeat them with 2 plasma grenades stuck to any part of their bodies without aiming for their Achilles heel and actually engaging in that dance is more trouble than it's worth, and at that point they're basically no different than any other member of the Covenant, who, in this game, appear to be absolutely dumb as a post in that they just stand there and let you shoot them, which was not at all how they behaved in the original game. Another one of the things that made Combat Evolved so revolutionary was the enemy AI. The Covenant would be amazingly aggressive and relentless with their battle tactics. The elites, especially, would never just stand still waiting around to die. They'd be constantly on the move, trying to get into a better tactical position or to get a better angle on you, generally making it as hard as possible for you to land your shots. Even if they haven't seen you yet, they're still patrolling around the area, not idly standing around waiting for the player to show up. Or if they are standing around, it's because they're hiding in cover waiting to ambush you and then rush you down to kill you. And they knew how to work together as a team. If an elite knows he's gonna lose a 1v1, he'll retreat all the way back behind their army of grunt allies, baiting you into a trap in which you are completely outgunned. If you retreated to cover, the grunts could use grenades to flush you out, or the elites could just charge you down anyway. Take that small sample size and amplify it to the entire rest of the 10 mission long campaign, and you have what is not only unbelievably advanced technology for 2001, but is also honestly more advanced than a lot of AI present in modern games. They felt like a proper squad working together to surround you, to outwit you, and to learn from your behavior. Like, look at this. I was trying to speedrun through this part of the level to record a clip inside the facility itself, but even though I was driving at maximum speed, the elite still chased me all the way down the ramp here because of how badly he wanted to kill me. But I don't see any of that in Halo Campaign Evolved. I see enemies virtually indistinguishable from those in Call of Duty with how motionless they are. You could assume in good faith the gameplay footage shown off in this demo was on normal difficulty, as it often is, but for one thing, even if you play Halo on normal, you will still witness this type of behavior from the elites. But more importantly, during the subsequent panels where they talked about the remake more in depth, they upped the difficulty to heroic, and eventually legendary, and on both difficulties where the AI is supposed to be at their most intelligent and unrelenting, I barely noticed a difference. Oh, actually, I did notice one major difference when they jumped to Legendary, that there were seemingly double the amount of enemies there normally are in some encounters.
You'll see while playing Legendary, there are a few more enemies that I'm gonna have to fight.
Because that's how they want to balance the higher difficulties. Not by giving the enemies more interesting AI behaviors, increasing the quality of the enemies you encounter, but instead by increasing the quantity of enemies. The old Halo 5 approach to difficulty balancing. Just throw a bunch of bullshit at the player and hope they can figure it out. You guys like the Warden Eternal? What if you fought 2 of them at once? Now what if you fought 3 of them at once? Brilliant! Hey, speaking of difficulty balancing, you know what else was steaming hot bullshit about Halo Reach and Halo 4 especially? The insta-kill melee attacks from the enemies that give you negative amounts of time to react before you're dead. In Combat Evolved, elites had very obvious wind-up attacks that gave you ample time to dodge them, but if you didn't dodge them, you still wouldn't be instantly killed. Well, apparently, according to Actman, who was able to play the campaign demo in person, that is no longer the case in this remake.
They had the bullshit like Halo 4 instant melee kill. Not a big fan, not a big fan.
Man, I love it when remakes just change shit for no reason that makes the game worse, but you know, that's besides the point. In terms of enemy intelligence, there's basically no difference at all between normal and legendary from what I saw. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is me playing the opening of the Silent Cartographer on legendary. Notice how the elites are never ever standing still unless I'm suppressing them with so much fire they're literally stun-locked. They're dodging all my grenades, they're moving between cover spots so I can never pin them down. They actually seem invested in not dying. It forces me to use grenades to trap the elite so he has nowhere to run from the explosions. It forces me to work together with my marines, allowing them to distract the elite while I flank around from the right, which is something the enemies can do as well. One of them even managed to flank me because his partner did such a good job of distracting me. Now this is one of the developers playing the Campaign Evolved demo on Legendary. Notice how he's able to sit behind a rock without any of the enemies rushing him down. Notice how this blue elite stands still and doesn't make any attempts to dodge the pistol shots. Back to my OG gameplay. Notice how after I storm the main beach and make it to the Forerunner structure, there's a second squad holding a defensive line that requires precise grenade throws and agile movements to keep one jump ahead and break up their formation, forcing them to retreat. Now notice how, in the remake, there is no defensive line at all, and they are instead just crouching around the corner, making it such that one single frag grenade would have been enough to take out all the jackals and severely damage the elites if the guy playing actually managed to throw it properly. Maybe you don't mind this quite as much as I do, because you can still see the elites are at least moving around a little bit. Alright. Now let's look at the next encounter where he jumps on a warthog turret, takes aim at the red elite, and relentlessly unloads the chain gun into him only for the elite to never move even once and die in a matter of seconds.
This is an acceptable strategy for legendary runs.
It works.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be. I'm not expecting them to charge the warthog and try to kill me up close and personal, because obviously that would be suicide when I have a turret, but I am expecting them to fucking move! If I try to do that same thing in the original game, the elites do not let me get away with it for very long. As soon as I start shooting, they fall back to cover behind the rocks and trees so I can't get an angle on them anymore, forcing me to engage them up close and personal. But even when I do that and start mowing them down, the elites once again recognize the danger they're in and retreat all the way up the ramp and around another rock, still trying to protect themselves. They do not want to die. They are trying to survive just as much as they are trying to kill me. Meanwhile,
this is an acceptable strategy for legendary runs.
It works.
That's embarrassing. Genuinely, if I didn't tell you what difficulty this was being played on, would you have been able to tell me it was the absolute highest, not counting all the 24 new skulls they're adding? These are not Halo enemies. They look like Halo enemies. They are aesthetically faithful to at least some iteration of the Covenant from one of the games. More on that in a bit. But in terms of behavior, I do not see the monstrously intelligent and unyielding enemies that nearly brought humanity to their knees. And this decrease in difficulty might have something to do with another key element of Combat Evolved that's been removed in this remake. The health system. You do still technically have a health bar, but it automatically regenerates like it does in Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, which is not how CE did it. If your shields went down and you started losing health units, you were out of luck until you encountered another health pack. And I can only assume they changed this in order to make the experience less challenging for newcomers, because having to manage a health bar takes too much extra work or some bullshit, whatever. I just want all my defensive units to constantly regenerate. regenerate. Shields, health, anything, everything! But even ignoring the fact that always having to scrounge for resources to heal yourself up suited the game's guerrilla warfare style very well, because you're supposed to be fighting alongside a small group of Marines just trying to survive on this foreign alien ring world without the rest of the UNSC to fall back on for support. Putting all that aside, mechanically speaking, CE's health system taught the player you couldn't just aimlessly run around and gun everything down. You had to play smarter than that to ensure you always had a solid amount of health, and if ever you became too vulnerable, you were then encouraged to think outside the box with your strategies when you don't have as big of a health buffer to battle the enemies head on. That's an element of CE's design that simply cannot be present in the remake because the health packs have been removed altogether. I can only assume Halo Studios views this as an antiquated video game mechanic that just makes the gameplay more frustrating for people, but their presence never made Combat Evolved an unfair or aggravating experience. Your shield would always act as a safety net with a fixed durability, so you could still have engaging, action-packed fights and never had to turtle behind a rock until you got to the next health pack if you got down to just one bar. It just meant you had less room for error, or maybe it meant you needed to rely on nearby power-ups to lend a helping hand. Another element that doesn't seem to be in the remake, if you didn't notice, they weren't present at any of the 3 locations shown off in this demo where overshields would have spawned in the original game. Maybe they're in different locations or spawn less frequently, but given how photorealistic the visuals are here, it would also not surprise me at all if Halo Studios saw traditional power-ups as too cartoony for the type of gritty world they were trying to craft. And even if you agree with them on the power-ups or the health system, they are still core parts of Halo Combat Evolved, and if you remove them, you transform the mechanical experience into something else entirely, making you wonder why you're even bothering remaking it in the first place. If you want to make a Halo game without power-ups where your health automatically regenerates, then go ahead, go make your own thing. Don't touch a game that's existed for 25 years that people love for what it is. But you see, that's just it. Based on this gameplay, it doesn't feel like the studio was even remotely interested in preserving the original gameplay experience of Halo Combat Evolved, despite their insistence that is not the case.
The number one thing was to be true to the original game.
Combat Evolved is a masterpiece, right? I mean, it is the perfect video game, the perfect story, the perfect characters.
You need to evolve to kind of move the experience forward.
The perfect video game.
It just feels like they remade the silent cartographer in Halo Infinite's Forge mode. Everything from the flow of combat to the weapon designs to the sound effects look and sound like Halo Infinite. And Halo Infinite does play great. Don't get me wrong, its core gameplay loop is superb. But if I wanted to play Halo Infinite, then I would go play Halo Infinite, not a Combat Evolved remake. Those are Infinite Marines, that's an Infinite Elite. This is literally just the Needler from Halo Infinite. Some people are generously assuming these are all just placeholder assets, but if they are, then why the hell would you have shown this gameplay footage so soon when you don't even have assets finalized for elites, grunts, marines, weapons, or anything really? And if they aren't placeholder assets, then it's the exact same thing that happened with Combat Evolved Anniversary, where everyone was looking forward to seeing a higher res iteration of the original game's art style, only to see the Halo 3 Cortana model and a shit ton of assets from Halo Reach copied over here. Only this time, instead of Halo Reach stuff, it's Halo Infinite stuff. I do not give a single shit about maintaining brand consistency or whatever other bullshit might be used to justify this. If you are remaking Combat Evolved, you should be trying to remain faithful to the designs of Halo Combat Evolved. It doesn't sound like CE either. Some sound effects are the same, but some are completely different, which is another instance of this halfway hybrid solution that really annoys me. Either replace everything or keep it all the same. Don't pick and choose which sound effects to keep and which to toss, because then the experience just feels inconsistent. Speaking of inconsistency, let's talk about what they've done to the voice acting. Literally every single voice line we've heard so far is completely unchanged. Captain Keyes, Foehammer, the Marines, they're all the exact same recordings from the original game in 2001, except for Cortana, for whom they brought Jen Taylor back into the booth to re-record presumably the entire script, plus some new lines that originally belonged to the Marines.
Area secure. All hostiles have been eliminated.
Area secure.
They also brought Steve Downes back in, but that I don't mind at all because he honestly kinda sounded like he had a cold for the entirety of the first game.
Let's stay focused. Halo, How do we use it against the Covenant?
So I'd say him re-recording his dialogue is a good thing for the remake, whereas I cannot stand what they've done to Cortana's lines.
Chief, Bravo 22 was bringing us some heavy weapons. After I saw we were up against Hunters, I thought you could use them. Chief, Bravo 22 was bringing us some heavy weapons. After I saw we were up against Hunters, I thought you could use them.
She genuinely just sounds like a completely different character. But not just any different character, she sounds like the weapon did in Halo Infinite.
I'd suggest sending a thank you card for the upgrade. But you killed the intended recipient, so we can skip that part.
One of the biggest points of praise everyone has for that game is how Jen Taylor voiced 3 different characters, all stemming from the same personality, and yet still made each one sound completely distinct from each other. It's what made Chief's interactions with the weapon so disconcerting, because even though she ostensibly looks the same and is obviously voiced by the same person, there's subtle nuances to her inflections and the delivery of her lines that make her different enough to make things feel a little uncanny. Yeah, I know the weapon is a copy of Cortana, but it's also made explicit in that game that she is still not Cortana, made even more apparent by the recent confirmation her official name is Joyeuse. She didn't just call herself Cortana. She is another Cortana model,
Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
but she is still entirely her own person, her own character, a far more youthful, exuberant, awkward, and naive AI in contrast to Cortana's witty, playful, level-headed confidence.
Don't let them lock the doors. Don't let them lock the doors.
That's one of the things people loved about her character so much in the original games, that she wasn't just the stereotypical AI persona they'd been conditioned to expect by other media. She wasn't the monotone, robotic, "Hello, Master Chief, I am Cortana," nor was she the overly energetic personality present in the weapon. It was like, okay, this girl's got a bit of an attitude to her.
Thanks for the tank. He never gets me anything.
She cracked jokes, she was sarcastic, she had opinions and wasn't afraid to share them. People liked that about her. It wasn't a personality trait that needed to be stamped out. It's the same fucking thing they did in that god-awful Paramount show. What, do you think people will feel offended if Cortana gives them a bit of snark and so you feel the need to overly sanitize everything? If that's not the reason behind this change and you're trying to make the game fall more in line with Halo Infinite, that doesn't make any sense either, because even ignoring what I said about the weapon becoming her own person in Halo Infinite, more importantly, this persona is incompatible with the events of this game. Can you imagine a character who sounds like this?
I underestimated the Covenant's understanding of Halo's subsystems.
Going on to have this kind of crash out towards the end of the game?
Sod off! I have the index. You can just float and sputter. Do you have any idea what that bastard almost made you do?
But gee, it's almost as if arbitrarily changing things without thinking about the broader ramifications might be a really bad idea. But it's not even just her delivery, it's the actual things she's saying. Listen to the difference in these 2 lines.
Okay, let's move out. Let's go find the map room that will show us the location of Halo's control center. I've been able to pinpoint the main facility by cross-referencing Covenant survey data and religious texts. We were right. It's on this island. I've marked the entrance with a nav plate.
One of them says, "Alright, we have our objective, let's go find it." The other says, "Don't worry, Chief, I know where we're going, let me help you get there." Why do you need to mark a waypoint for how to get out of this building? There's literally only one way in and out.
How stupid do you think I am?
The silent cartographer is just a big-ass circle. There's literally no way you could possibly get lost here. One of the most appealing things about this mission is the fact that it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you where to go. You can drive in any direction you want and just discover what's out there all on your own. In the original game, waypoints of course appear when needed, but generally speaking, Combat Evolved's levels are so masterfully designed that you don't need explicit instructions telling you where to go. You don't need the game to shout at you to go save the Marines because your eyes are naturally guided to the giant blue beam shooting into the air or the other distress beacons nearby. What if you go to the wrong building first? Not possible. You will not be punished for doing so. The game accounts for all the possible choices the player can make and plays unique dialogue depending on which location you visit first.
Good. That should open the door that leads into the main shaft. This is a security override station for the main facility, located somewhere else on this island.
and if you do choose to abandon your marines on the beach and go exploring on your own, you can grab a rocket launcher from a supply cache and then come back to really fuck shit up. Or you can stick by their side from the beginning and conquer the Covenant as a team. There is no wrong way to play this mission. Yet Halo Studios once again apparently doesn't agree that exploration is a good thing because they seem to be doing everything in their power to discourage that. I can virtually guarantee you that when this game comes out, if I try to drive out into the ocean, it'll either block me with an invisible wall or it'll just outright kill me. Hey, guess what? Late breaking update, someone actually tried to do this during the gameplay demo and you'll never believe it, they put a big fuck off invisible wall there. God damn it. Oh, come on. It's not like there was anything interesting to find out there anyway. Okay, first of all, that's not an excuse to limit the player's exploration, and second of all, the solution to that is to actually put something interesting out there. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Combat Evolved Anniversary actually did that. They added skulls and terminals at interesting, sometimes really hard to reach locations in the campaign where in the original game there was nothing. The solution is not to tell the player, fuck you, play the game our way or die.
We need to find the security override to get this door open. Let's move down the beach. Keep an eye out for any unusual structures that could house the security system.
It's like an episode of Dora the Explorer. Do you see anything unusual about this area? It's dialogue for babies. Halo Combat Evolved was rated M for mature. I shouldn't be listening to this kind of dialogue that treats the player like they'd lose a game of tic-tac-toe if they were given the first 4 moves. Probably the same reason why the opening cutscene now goes on for way longer than it needs to and has way more unnecessary aerial battle elements because I guess just flying up to the island and jumping into combat wasn't enough. Being able to look around the Pelican in first person as you approached the battle was too boring. We needed to have more crazy action! Woohoo! I am legitimately terrified for how they're going to handle the restrained horrors of the Flood reveal in 343 Guilty Spark if even the simplicity of these cutscenes sends them into a blind panic. Even the characters whose voice actors didn't return aren't safe. Listen to the opening dialogue here from Fohammer.
Get set to cut out swinging. Touchdown! Hit it, Marines! Get set to cut out swinging.
They cut a line from Fohammer's speech! Well, why would you do that? It's such an awesome line that really gets you hyped up to storm the beach and take down the Covenant. Touchdown! Hit it, Marines! Why would you cut that? And why would you then turn around and use that line for marketing purposes on Twitter? Was this game specifically remade to test me? Why are you playing 2 different music tracks on top of each other for this cutscene? This is not a significant enough cinematic to warrant the main Halo theme, but even if it was, that doesn't mean you play 2 tracks at the same time that clash with each other. It was so simple in the original. Short, sweet, and to the point. No unnecessary blocking or extra shots or extra music like both this and the opening cutscene of this mission had. What is it with remakes of all shapes and sizes, across all mediums, that take something very simple and clean and just drag it out unnecessarily? Whoa. You change all this for no reason, but then you will absolutely one-to-one recreate Chief's original Mark V Beyond Your Armor no matter how bad it looks. Yeah, I also do not at all like the design of Chief's new armor. It's clearly trying to stay faithful to the original game.
That's a first.
The one thing that actually looks like it's from Combat Evolved, and it's probably the worst thing you could have chosen to keep faithful. Within the original game's minimalist art style, he kinda looks charming. To me, at least. Then, when they tried to recreate it at an anniversary, he looked hideous. Look how tiny his hands are. And while this new design does look much, much, much better than that, I still think he just looks like an action figure, and this design really clashes with the hyper-realistic environments. Speaking of which, while this game may technically look better than the original, it's missing all the charm. Combat Evolved had a vibrant atmosphere. It had bright colors, it had simplistic enemy designs which popped off the screen because of how their colors contrasted with the environments, allowing for extremely refined visual clarity, which is of pivotal importance in a game as fast-paced as Halo. I am not compelled by something that's trying to look intensely photorealistic. If I wanted that, I could just look outside. When I want to get immersed in a fictional world, I want to see something the real world can't give me. I don't feel any sense of a personality when I look at this gameplay demo. I just see the millionth bajillionth bog standard Unreal Engine 5 experience, complete with all the mid-gameplay stuttering you've come to expect from this horribly unoptimized engine, which is supported by plenty of people who've played it in person. This doesn't offer me anything visually I can't get in a dozen other places. It's so fucking boring to look at. It does not look like a modernization of a 2001 video game. It looks like a 2025 product through and through.
Oh guys, look, we slapped a shitty desaturated CRT filter over the original gameplay footage to make it look dull in comparison to our shiny new graphics. Man, fuck off.
You know what's really cool? Seeing a daytime sky decorated with stars you should logically only be able to see at night. That makes Halo stand out. You know what doesn't have that same vibe? This. Yeah, maybe it's of objectively higher fidelity, but who cares about that when achieving it leads you to losing your artistic identity? I don't want to hear them say, it's a faithful recreation, you can relive this legendary campaign, while also fundamentally changing so many things about the core experience for the worse. There was nothing wrong with the original Blam engine. The only reason why they felt compelled to switch to Unreal in the first place was because of how badly 343 fucked everything up when trying to evolve it into the Slipspace engine for Halo Infinite. They didn't have the tools required to make an open world game. They were not designed for it. That whole game was tied together with duct tape and chewing gum as they made adjustments to the engine mid-production, literally laying down tracks as the train was speeding towards launch, made worse by Microsoft's staunch refusal to commit to hiring in-house devs and just outsource everything to contractors who would eventually go on to leave the studio once their contract expires, just as they finally learned the tools, forcing a new team to come in and spend most of their brief tenure reverse engineering what the last group of contractors did, and by the time they arrived at the game's launch, they had accrued such an enormous amount of technical debts that they were in no position to sustain a live service game with anything remotely close to an acceptable level of consistency, and broke the engine so badly they couldn't even put in a dedicated Slayer playlist at launch because of UI limitations! No, we weren't happy with the state of the game either. Okay, so then why the fuck did you release it? And now, thanks to that, here we are in the future, stuck with Unreal Engine 5 and all the awful baggage that comes with it. Because if we ditch our own proprietary engine, then it'll be even easier for Microsoft to keep swapping out development teams on a contractual basis when Unreal is something they'll already be familiar with. Turns out it's the same story as always. The studio screws something up and is then expected to be praised for fixing the thing that was totally fine before they came along. There being blood splatter in the game or the hunter's worms actually wriggling are the least of my concerns when the core simplistic art style that made Combat Evolved so appealing has been surgically removed to appeal to people whose only metric for whether a game is good or bad is how technologically advanced the graphics are. I'm sorry, but I really get the impression that the people who are impressed by this remake's visuals are not interested in preserving a game's art direction. They just want to see the shiniest possible new graphics, and to each their own on what they prefer, but that's just so depressing to me. I don't know. The original game maintained a deliberately minimalist art direction, which was instrumental in creating these liminal environments that were simultaneously intensely eerie and magnificently captivating. And you know what? They managed to achieve that without making everything so ungodly dark it's almost impossible to see what's going on sometimes. CE Anniversary had the opposite problem, where sections that were supposed to be moody and atmospheric were now blinding shockingly bright, where foggy swamps were now glowing green rainforests, where levels specifically designed to take place at night now look barely any darker than normal daytime hours, and where these vast, empty rooms were suddenly splattered with hideously ugly neon lighting, thus completely obsoleting the flashlight as a gameplay mechanic. But in Campaign Evolved, they've removed any trace of decent lighting in these indoor sections. Even just the quiet, peaceful, empty beaches have a vibe that is at once both calming and kinda unsettling when you're here by yourself. And I like when the beaches look like actual beaches covered in sand, not when they're polluted with a bunch of mucky rocks and gravel. You shouldn't be able to see the entire Halo ring with perfect clarity at all times. It should fade into the distance the further up the ring you look. These old walls with sparkling stars buried deep within them gives the Forerunners a far more distinctive identity than all this shiny shit this studio is so fucking obsessed with when it comes to Forerunner architecture, as does seeing how the ocean has begun to erode this structure as time has gone on. That attention to detail impresses me way more than shiny. I am aware that the main reason Combat Evolved looks like this is because of technological constraints, but that doesn't mean the decisions made as a result of those constraints do not have any value. Regardless of how we got to the end result, there is a palpable charm to CE's visuals with a confident, committed, and consistent artistic direction. This all just feels sterile to me. Why would you change the Forerunner holograms? Why take such a visually interesting, colorful, dynamic design with all these moving pieces, then just mute all the colors so it basically blends into the background and make it an almost completely static object? Why would you change such iconic and distinct Forerunner structures to make them look as generic as possible? See, this one isn't even a purely aesthetic thing. It straight up does not make sense for there to be such a monolithic structure here. The reason this building looks so different and isn't this tall is because it's actually the entrance to a lower layer of the Halo ring. It's a massive swinging hatch. You can't just change shit for no reason. How is this enormous pylon supposed to open up and reveal the hatch? Why does everything look so pristine and shiny, like they've just been pressure washed and given a fresh coat of paint in anticipation of your arrival, even though these buildings have been around for untold millennia? The Halo ring doesn't look old because the developers couldn't make things look shiny or reflective because they obviously could. They did it because it was narratively consistent for something that's millions of years old and was purpose-built to accomplish a very specific, universe-threatening task to not be designed like an amusement park to dazzle the eye, but to instead be designed like a machine. Not only does it logically make more sense for them to be visibly weathered and decaying, not only does that make them more unique than just a cookie-cutter futuristic facility, which is what we saw in Halo 4 and Combat Evolved Anniversary, but it also allows them to blend in with the surrounding environments to feel like a natural part of the world instead of sticking out like a sore thumb. Like the mountain has a giant metallic zit. But of course, if they kept that consistent, then they wouldn't be able to show off the shiny new Unreal Engine ray tracing. And oh, what glorious reflections you have off these metallic surfaces. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Yeah, that's the other thing. These graphics really only look technically impressive in screenshots. In motion? Oh boy. Rampant pop-in problems or just stability problems, whether it's with textures or shadows or the whole sky reloading in front of your eyes each and every time you die. Or my favorite one, you want to see a magic trick? Now you see me, now you don't! Even characters in cutscenes apparently can just teleport out of the shot for a few frames. And you don't even really have to slow down to notice these things. It's just blatant. It's in every single shot of this opening cutscene. The guy playing the demo threw a grenade at a group of elites and it literally bounced off an invisible wall. This is the exact same thing that happened in Combat Evolved Anniversary, but at least that game had the excuse, even though it wasn't a good one, of running two graphics engines at once and the new visuals not quite lining up to the original geometry. But you built all this from scratch. This is a from-the-ground-up remake in a new engine, and this is the level they chose to show off. God knows what state the other levels are in, and yeah, I know, it's a work in progress. Hopefully they'll iron out the graphical hiccups before it comes out next year, but honestly, I have been given very little reason to believe they will fix all of this. this because they have not earned that level of trust yet. I was playing co-op in Halo Infinite one time, died in one mission, and then somehow respawned in a completely different mission. I wish I was joking. Given the state of previous modern Halo releases, forgive me if I don't have the utmost confidence in Campaign Evolved being particularly stable at launch. Speaking of co-op, and my inability to completely trust them, you tell me, for instance, you're gonna have 2-player split-screen co-op, and I'm sure this time you'll be able to keep your promise, but we've been down this road before, so I am not believing anything until the game finally comes out and we see for ourselves what it looks like. But things like the use of non-combat evolved assets in this combat evolved remake show me they have not at all learned from their mistakes because it's the same problem Anniversary had, just reheated. And it also tells me they have no confidence in their direction, they have nothing they want to say, no vision for the art of this remake, they're just throwing a bunch of stuff from different games together and setting it against this Unreal Engine environment, hoping the photorealism alone is enough to impress you, and while it may work for some people, it sure as hell does not work for me. This isn't a bold, artistic reimagining, it is very transparently a, we fucked up royally, we need some easy money, so let's cobble this together out of reused assets and subpar AI behavior and a nearly identical script just to get something out there based on a game the fanbase already adores. I would also criticize the fact that the game is going to be launching without a multiplayer component, but honestly, I think I should consider myself lucky because if the campaign footage is any indication, I don't believe for a second they'd adapt CE's much more casual, party game-esque multiplayer faithfully. Also, have I mentioned that Halo Campaign Evolved is the most dumb shit fucking name of all time? And you know what? Maybe you don't think any one of the individual things I've mentioned today are that big of a deal. And you're right. In isolation, they're not. So you can't drive into the ocean. No biggie. So the enemies aren't as smart as usual. Oh well. So Cortana sounds a little different. What's the big deal? The problem is that when you stack all these things up on top of each other, it paints a much bigger picture, crystal clear as day, that they just fundamentally do not know what they are doing with this remake. I did not go into this reveal looking to hate it, partially because, contrary to what some people may believe, Combat Evolved could absolutely benefit from a remake. I love this game. Sincerely, I love it to death. It's one of my favorite Halo campaigns and certainly one of the most fun ones to play. It is not mechanically outdated in any meaningful way. It holds up better than a lot of games released way after it, and it's one of the most important video games ever made because of how it completely redefines the first-person shooter genre, especially on consoles. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. The big thing that pretty much everyone agrees on is that the game starts to decay in the second half, not because it becomes any less enjoyable, but because they start reusing assets and have you running backwards through levels you've already played once. The presence of the Flood does allow for the encounters, atmosphere, and overall experience in each of these levels to be different from your original runs, and I would never want to change the final mission because of how perfect it is as a full circle conclusion to the story. But it's also crystal clear this was only done because they ran out of time. And I'd like to see how they could potentially make some aspects of the levels less repetitive, or add some new environments to the back half as long as they made sense for the story. Rocket Launcher Flood are absolute horseshit. Even on the easiest difficulty, they can just annihilate you before you even knew what happened with no kind of wind-up animation like other deadly attacks. Vehicle physics, while hilarious, can be extremely frustrating when you can be instantly killed by any of them if they're not perfectly stationary. Some cutscenes have really cool things happen, but said cool things aren't easily readable because of how clunky the cinematography is. You can't even see keys actually splatter the hunters with the spirit here. Some storytelling elements are clearly a product of rushed development. Oh look, Guilty Spark appeared out of nowhere, introducing a fourth faction after just introducing a third, and then also introduces the ability to just teleport you anywhere you want to go. Oh look, we need to get to the captain quickly. I guess we can pull something from your suit to teleport you halfway across the ring and then never do it again after this.
I think we should only try this once.
Listen to how fast Jen is talking.
Yeah, because you wrote this like in the last second.
What the hell are you people making me read?
Why haven't you been using this method of transportation
Let me just
this
say
whole time?
the worst cinematic in the game, which is what we just saw.
Hey, I know I should probably give you at least some kind of warning regarding the monsters you're gonna find in the swamp, but that would ruin the surprise, and I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. The massive exposition dump in Truth and Reconciliation only exists because there was another level that had to be cut which would have introduced this information in a much more natural way. I reiterate once more that I love Halo Combat Evolved, and can make a whole video talking about why it's a masterpiece. I technically already have one, but it's not very good, so don't worry about it. I highlight these things to show I wasn't actively resistant to the concept of a CE remake. I was ready to welcome it with open arms because the game has a lot to gain from such a proposition. And like I said at the beginning, they have added a lot of quality of life improvements, but they're just not capitalizing on the opportunity to add content that was cut from the original game due to a lack of time, or laying down early seeds of story elements from later games such as The Arbiter to make the whole trilogy feel more cohesive because they're insistent on keeping the story exactly as it was.
We want to tell an authentic story and we want to level up the cinematics from the source.
For better or worse, or doing anything to make the second half of the game less visually repetitive. Instead, they're adding 3 random prequel missions that have absolutely nothing to do with the campaign and by their own admission are basically there for fan service.
Total surprise, total fan service. Who doesn't want some more Sergeant Johnson in their lives, right?
Even though they're probably still the thing I'm looking forward to the most because at least there'll be something new as opposed to worse versions of levels that have existed since before I was born, they have absolutely no relevance to the main story set on the Halo ring. I'm sure people will love them because they're gonna feature Sergeant Johnson and everyone loves Sergeant Johnson, and again, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't intrigued, but if you want to dip into fan service, give us a Contact Harvest spin-off game. You should be using this opportunity to expand on what is, frankly, a very bare-bones story. One that does a fantastic job of setting the stage for much more intricate and intimate narratives in the future taking place in a marvelously intriguing world, but ultimately still very bare-bones in terms of the core plot and characters. You should be incorporating additional narrative elements present in the game's novelization, but you aren't. You are wasting all the potential of a Halo Combat Evolved remake all to offer something that has less intelligent AI, worse level design, worse voice delivery, several fundamental mechanics missing, and which may look technically more impressive but is missing all the heart and soul and somehow still looks far less polished than something that came out over 2 decades ago. It feels like a glorified remaster that's trying to modernize the experience, but modernization in this case just means removing core elements of the experience to water it down as much as possible for the masses. Or it means adding things like sprint. You know, it's really annoying seeing them be like, oh, don't worry guys, you can turn off sprint in this game. Why do you keep doing this? You're fully aware of why people don't like this stuff, but instead of removing it from the game altogether, you're just like, okay, yeah, we know you guys don't like it, but hey, at least you can turn it off. Yeah, I know we moved all the UI elements around for literally no reason at all, but don't worry, you can put it back to the way it should be. Please praise us for giving you the ability to disable all the shitty changes we put into the game in the first place. What making these things optional screams to me is that you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. You don't have a clear design principle for this remake. You're just like, here guys, make it whatever you want. If you're watching this video as a non-Halo fan and are confused why something that sounds to you like a basic feature for modern FPS games is so contentious amongst this community, I'm going to try and illustrate the problem to the best of my abilities. If you play Halo Infinite's Delta playlists, which remove sprint, your base movement speed is significantly increased because sprinting doesn't actually make you go any faster. They have to actively slow you down to justify the mechanic's existence. You'd think a super soldier would be so hyper-skilled they'd be able to move at top speed while also shooting, throwing grenades, and meleeing, but not according to 343 and Halo Studios. Additionally, there is no map crossover between the normal playlists which have sprint sprint, and the Delta playlists, which don't, because the existence of the mechanic inherently has to impact how the map is designed. It's why walking from one end to the other of a Halo 2 map takes just as long as it does to sprint from one end to the other on the Halo 5 version of that same map. But I assume disabling sprint in Halo Campaign— my voice is dead, I can't do it. The name fucking sucks— is not going to suddenly reload the entire level to shrink or expand it, which means the levels are either going to feel too big if you don't use sprint, or if they haven't altered the size of the levels at all, the ability to sprint is just gonna make everything feel way tinier than it should be. Also, you shouldn't be encouraging people to just mindlessly run around through all these environments.
Why don't you, there you go, I was gonna say, why don't you speed things up here a little bit, Unishack? So
you should be encouraging them to slow down, to stop and smell the roses, to really soak in the atmosphere. Feel the suspense and escalation of tension as you explore these mysterious locations. Halo Studios seems to think people don't care about atmosphere and just want to get to the next fight as fast as possible, but part of what made Halo so unique was that it had more than just the combat. It's like, just think of that scene from Up. It's the boring moments, the quote-unquote boring moments you remember the most. The quiet breaks between the encounters where you have nothing and no one but yourself and a vast alien ring world surrounding you on all sides, whether it's the sweeping geometrical enigma of a horizon or the liminal interior spaces. We take it for granted now that Halo's been around for 25 years, but this ring world is supposed to be a mystery for the player to unravel as they explore the depths of this ancient Forerunner artifact. A world with terrain and architecture that's similar enough to humanity to feel familiar, but also just different enough such that every room feels slightly off. That was a critical component to Halo Combat Evolved's design, to what made exploring these levels so impactful. And this is all without mentioning the fact that the player's movement directly impacts how enemy behaviors are designed, which is why Halo 5's enemies all had absurdly aggressive lock-on homing weapons to try to account for how sporadically you could move across the map with all your Spartan abilities. So I don't want to hear a thing about, well, you control the buttons you press, because me choosing not to use a mechanic doesn't have any impact on how the game's core design is impacted by its presence. These things are only being added into the game because it's trendy to do so, because they think people want these things because it's 2026 and you can't have a first-person shooter game without sprint in this day and age. That would just be silly! Metroid Prime who? Not because they have any level of confidence in the design of their game. And I'm also really fucking sick of hearing this "we want to welcome a new generation of Halo fans" line get regurgitated in regards to the notion of Halo coming to PlayStation 5. If that's what you wanted to do, then you should have just ported over the Master Chief Collection. It's one of, if not the best collection of video games available, and you can get 6 incredible games for $40, usually less because of how frequently it goes on sale. That's what happened with my high school friends when they started porting all the games to PC. Both new fans who could never play Halo because they never owned an Xbox, or returning fans who played when they were younger but had since sold their original consoles, jumping on to experience these games on a new platform together. Oh sure, the game doesn't look as good as the original, but you know what? This remake isn't for Halo fans. It'll be a great entry point for PlayStation fans. No, you know what would be a great entry point for them? Halo Combat Evolved. It is not some esoterically impenetrable video game, nor is it a game that's been lost to time and poorly preserved. It's right there, in the MCC, remarkably well preserved with updates made since the game's launch to get it even closer to its original launch state. There's absolutely no reason you need to remake the whole thing just to appeal to new fans. What, do new fans not like it when the enemies provide clear visual indicators that your bullets are connecting? Can people really not tell if they're hitting their shots unless they have these annoying inorganic hit markers? It doesn't even make sense that I should be getting this worked up about a Combat Evolved remake when the original is always going to be there for me to play no matter what, and for me personally, yeah, That's true, but I don't want PlayStation fans' first experience with Halo to be this version of the game, the same way I wouldn't want a new generation of kids' first experience with Lilo and Stitch to be this abomination. I want them to experience the original classic, not a version that runs, plays, looks, and sounds dramatically worse. And I especially hope this doesn't mean they're just completely scrapping any plans to continue the story past Halo Infinite in the games and will just reboot everything that's ever come out of this franchise from now until the heat death of the universe. If they treat this as a hard reset of the Halo universe and scrap the idea of ever making anything new, then it is genuinely over. It's not unprecedented for a series to release remakes of older games while also continuing to create new entries, but given this studio's insistence on repeatedly setting up a story and then immediately throwing it all in the bin in the very next game, I'm rapidly running out of good faith to give that that's not what they're planning. That the future of this franchise isn't just playing worse versions of things that already exist, which cost much more to play and to make.
No one hates Halo more than Halo fans.
Shut up! I can't stand this mindset that any criticism levied against new releases is a sign of toxicity and ungratefulness. Spending even just 5 minutes scrolling through Twitter and seeing people pushing back against even the slightest amount of criticism with "the insufferable Halo fanbase will truly never be satisfied. This looks amazing! Y'all don't deserve anything. I wish nothing but the worst for these Halo fans, and may they never be happy again." Just makes me want to drink lead paint. It reeks of the don't ask questions, just consume product mindset. I'm sorry, but I refuse to be bulldozed into just hyping up anything and everything new from a series just because it has the name Halo on it. I refuse to be pressured into accepting subpar releases lest I be accused of not being a true fan. You should expect better from the things you enjoy, particularly when they come from a multi-billion-dollar corporation who are probably going to charge you $70 or $80 to play this, and when the thing in question is a remake of one of the most groundbreaking video games ever made, both in terms of its mechanics and its commitment to more cinematic storytelling. They cannot improve if you do not criticize them. Toxic positivity is just as bad as toxic negativity. They are two threads in the same stitch. Obviously, don't call for people to be fired or harass any developers at Halo Studios or people who are excited to play this when it comes out next year, but I absolutely do not have to unabashedly adore everything they make no matter what it is. We're still a year out from the game's launch. They have a survey you can fill out for people who played the demo in person. Why else would they do that if they didn't want people to actually give them feedback on the remake in the hopes they can make meaningful changes next year?
Your tears are delicious. Fake gamers showing their true colors once again. No one cares about suspense or pacing. This game isn't for you. It's for the next generation of players who gotta go fast.
Yeah, I mean, 343 Guilty Spark, oh, that's such a boring, shitty level. Oh my god, environmental storytelling, mystery, build-up, pacing.
Let me just run through everything. I just want to shoot stuff. Pew, 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 pew.
Never mind the fact that Microsoft has spent a decade and a half trying to appeal to people who believe that stuff by having all these crazy movement mechanics, and it has never ever worked. Why? Because the people who want a game like Call of Duty or Titanfall will just go play those games instead. It sounds so obvious and condescending, but I make games that appeal to Halo fans, not people who will try Halo's version of Call of Duty for a week and then move on to the next big thing. The new generations have Fortnite, they have Roblox, they have the games they like. That's fine. It's good that the industry has a wide array of experiences appealing to different sensibilities. So stop trying to be something you're not and just embrace the franchise that you actually are. I'm just so tired of being a Halo fan. The last 15 years have been just so utterly exhausting for this franchise. They're just constantly spinning off in the wrong direction, followed by massively backtracking on their mistakes, ultimately creating a trilogy that's completely disjointed and unfocused and borderline undigestible for someone who isn't intimately familiar with all the expanded universe material available outside of the games themselves. Constantly launching new games that somehow have even less content than the last game they released. Halo 4 was the last last game to launch with Forge, and that was over 13 years ago. When's the last time we had a feeder mode that wasn't completely broken? When's the last time that they haven't tried to nickel and dime people to death, whether it's pay to win shit like Blitz packs and Rec packs, or the most predatory customization shop I may have ever seen in a video game? And of course, their most recent failure. Nearly 3 years of a botched live service experience that only recently started making somewhat significant headway in fulfilling the original promise of Halo Infinite's multiplayer, and even then, there's still a plethora of issues that will likely never be addressed. And this is all without even mentioning the embarrassingly broken launches of the Master Chief Collection not once, but twice, the unmitigated nightmare fuel that was the Paramount show, or developers who've recently been laid off from Halo Studios that speak out about how apparently no one there is even happy with the quality of what they're making, and that is the rumor that Halo Studios might possibly have generative AI woven into every facet of their game development pipelines, just like the rest of Microsoft, which is a rumor that was only further substantiated when the game's producer refused to give a simple yes or no answer when questioned about it, and danced around the subject with, oh well, you know, it's a tool, and it's really kind of challenging when it's so integrated with our tooling. Shut the fuck up! Yes or no? It's an easy question to answer if you're not using it. Just say no. But you didn't say that. The only reason you'd answer like that is if you were using it, but you know people won't like it if they're using it, so you just tiptoe around it with all this corporate speak, and it's just, then there's whatever the hell's going on with Glenn Israel, who's been with Halo since the Bungie days, and his mysterious message for why he left the studio after 17 years, implying not so great things about the workplace culture. And that isn't even a timeline of like the full decade. There's more I could go into if you wanted me to about everything that's happened with this godforsaken franchise for the last decade and a half. Most of what I just said is within the last couple of years. Hell, some of it is within the last month. The generative AI thing and the Glenn Israel thing, that's like the last month. The layoffs I mentioned, that was back in July. Halo Infinite's live service has just been constant over the last few years, and amongst all that, we had to deal with the stupid fucking Halo show on Paramount that might actually be the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. This is me going easy on them. There's so much more I could go into of everything that they've done over I would just like one good piece of news to come out of this franchise. Please. People are always like, oh, well, if you hate it so much, then why don't you just move on to a different game? Maybe it's because Halo is something I've been playing since I was in middle school. Maybe because the core Halo experience, at its best, isn't something I can get from any other game. Maybe because I don't want to just say, yeah, Halo blows now. I'm gonna go play Call of Duty and Apex Legends and Valorant like all the cool kids, yeah! I don't thrive on seeing the series continuously fall short of expectations. This doesn't make me happy. I want to see this series succeed again. I want them to understand why people have reacted so negatively to their previous entries and create a game that finally puts Halo on top of the charts again. I've had nothing but optimism for this studio since the rebranding last year, believing in good faith that because all the leadership had been replaced, there was potential for them to prove they'd learn from their mistakes and start trying to make things right moving forward. And I'm not chasing some elusive nostalgic high I could only experience when I was a kid and will never be able to achieve again no matter what Halo Studios does. Halo Infinite came out just a few years ago, and the multiplayer's fucking abysmal failings aside, the campaign, I was completely blown away by the strides they made to fix the mistakes of the past, both narratively and mechanically, and I will fight every last one of you on that campaign being a great experience. I can talk about its crippling, aggravating flaws until I'm blue in the face, but I can do so 1,000,000 times over for all the things I absolutely love about it, and one day, I will finally make a video talking about all of that stuff. I've never been anti-Bungie or anti-343. I've always just been pro-Halo. I'm as annoyed by Halo 2's difficulty balancing as I am by Halo 5's. I love Halo Infinite's campaign just as much as I love Halo 3's. Halo 3 opened my eyes to the world of what video games were capable of, as it was my first ever M-rated experience. Having not even played the first 2 games at that point, finishing the fight still gave me a level of euphoria I didn't even know was possible, and the satisfaction of clearing the campaign for the first time ever, charging across the Halo ring as everything was exploding all around me with that ear orgasmic fusion of the two main Halo melodies, the ethereal monk choirs and the adrenaline-fueled rock music is one of my all-time fondest gaming memories, as are the countless hours I've spent goofing around in wacky custom games, concentrating intently and working together to secure a win in competitive matches, spending months in middle school trying to actually get good at these games and learning how to play them all on Legendary, or just experiencing some of the greatest storytelling games have to offer. It didn't matter if I was playing with my friends or if I was just by myself, just immersing myself in this universe that I love by myself. Halo has been an instrumental influence in my life in so many positive ways. I've stuck with it through all its highs and lows and will never ever stop recommending the Master Chief Collection to anyone and everyone I can, because I believe every person on the planet deserves the chance to experience such a phenomenal series of video games now that it's not completely and utterly broken. It is because of that undying love and passion for this franchise that I am so intensely disappointed with how this is all gone. If you're watching this video, odds are you probably primarily know me from my Toy Story coverage. You probably already know what that franchise means to me, how it already has and still continues to change my life for the better. But if I'm being perfectly honest, Toy Story is a franchise where I didn't realize how much I cared about it until Toy Story 4 came out when I was in high school, and it forced me to really put the original trilogy under the microscope, to scrutinize them and figure out what it was about these stories and characters I loved so much that had been surgically and precisely removed from the fourth one. For many, many years of my life in between elementary school and high school, Toy Story wasn't something that was constantly on my brain. Halo, on the other hand, was always there. It is the embodiment of my middle school, high school, and college experiences. At every point in my life, Halo has provided something special for me. In middle school, it helped me make the first real friendships I ever had by giving us all something to bond over. In high school, it served as a vessel for trying to make even a slight difference in the world, as it was one of the major games that we had on display at a charity event that my friends and I set up together to benefit children's cancer research. And in college, it gave everyone I'd connected with throughout my life something to retreat to for sanctuary, even when the rest of the world was falling apart. Just something to keep us all sane during the pandemic. Either grinding away at Halo 5 trying to reach Spartan rank 152, going back to the classics on MCC as new content upgrades came out, or even just to complete the weekly challenges. I, specifically, have a distinct core memory of March 3rd, 2020, a particularly bad day for my mental health, as all I saw around me was just doom and gloom in the headlines from teachers, from classmates. That's all anyone was interested in talking about, was this new virus. And the more I heard, the more severe the anxiety coursing through my veins was, to the point where I eventually ran out of the classroom into the halls, burying my head in my knees and hyperventilating, as it seemed like any sense of stability I'd come to know was threatening to be completely unraveled. Only to finally come home to the news that Halo Combat Evolved had been ported to PC on the Master Chief Collection, at which point I jumped into the campaign and the multiplayer with my friends, and all our worries just immediately subsided, even if it was only for a few short, blissful hours. I said it once, I'll say it again. Halo is the embodiment of nearly every major turning point in my life. So I really don't appreciate seeing new people come in and rip everything out of the series I enjoyed. People telling me the things I loved about it are actually stinky, old, outdated mechanics, unpalatable for a new generation of players, and trying to say their version is better.
It is the ultimate Halo CE campaign remake,
when it demonstrably is not. If Campaign Evolved comes out next year and blows me away, if it's a faithful remake that feels good to play with even more quality of life updates we don't know about yet outweighing the drawbacks, or if by some chance Halo Studios actually listens to the fan feedback they're soliciting and implements meaningful changes to at least some of these things, then I will be the first person to put up my hand and say, yeah, I was wrong. I was too quick to judge. This is amazing, because the last thing I want to see is this series failing. failing. I don't want to see Halo continue to suffer under the suffocating chokehold that is the rapidly declining Xbox brand. I don't want to see stories and characters I love be dragged through the mud. I don't want to see the classic Halo experience diluted just because they think it's outdated and archaic and in desperate need of updates. I want this series to succeed. I want it to thrive. I want to be able to tell people I love Halo and not have that packaged with an enormous asterisk. But I just have to call it like I see it. And right now, I am not only astoundingly unimpressed by what I've seen here in this reveal, I'm actively frustrated by almost all of it. I have been given absolutely no reason to believe, based on what they've shown, that they have even the faintest understanding of why people love the original game apart from the most surface level nostalgia of the iconic beach rush on Silent Cartographer and, oh wow, you can see Fohammer's face now, isn't that cool? I hope to God I'm wrong about all this. But when it comes to all the problems this remake could potentially have, I'm afraid we're just getting started. Alright, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I thank you all for watching, particularly those of you who are actually looking forward to the remake and still heard me out anyway. And especially those of you who don't know anything about Halo and still listen to me rant about it for an hour anyway. But if you've never played the games before, I emphatically encourage you to check them out for yourself. I can virtually guarantee you'll get far more bang for your buck spending $40 on 6 games than what will probably be $70 or $80 on a single remake. And if you do, then please, for the love of God, play Combat Evolved with the original graphics and music so you don't have the ambience completely ruined for you, and you don't have to deal with graphics that don't match the level geometry. Also, a massive thank you once again to Gugonic for helping get this video across the finish line. I originally recorded this back in October and even edited a significant portion intending to release this before the Toy Story 1 video, but ultimately realized there was no possible way I'd ever be able to make the anniversary if I did that, so I pushed it to the back burner, and over the course of the last month, while I've been writing and recording for the Toy Story 2 love letter, Gugonic's been helping fill in those gaps on the timeline that I didn't get to edit back when I first recorded it in October, so you guys had something to tide you over in the meantime. If you liked hearing me talk about a video game for a change, please let me know in the comments, because if this is something you guys are interested in seeing, I'd love to do more of it. I mean, not exactly like this guy, this should not have, I'm hoping to never have to do a video like this again. This only happened because my brain literally just wouldn't shut up about how annoyed I was at this stupid remake, and I did not plan on covering this on the channel, but it was literally just, I know I need to work on the Toy Story 2 video, but I physically can't bring myself to do it until I just vent. I needed an outlet to vent, and that's what this was. But if you want to hear me talk about video games in a more constructive way, akin to my more recent videos, then please let me know, because yeah, that's something I'd be more than happy to do more of at some point in the future. But for now, I return to the editing mine so I can hopefully get this Toy Story 2 love letter finished sometime next month. Or maybe you'll see me again a little sooner if the Toy Story 5 trailer drops before then, but let's hope that doesn't happen. But for today, my time here is finished. Also, happy belated anniversary to the god-awful piss stain of a video game that caused this cataclysmic downward spiral in the first place and ultimately led us to the position we're in today. Wake me when you need me. Fuck you, Halo 5. I'll see you in a month. I'm out of here.